unanimously. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our January 26, 2022 meeting. Are there any changes anyone would like to make to our minutes? Hearing no changes, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
I will make that motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Stressman. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Friedrich. All in favor of accepting the minutes of January 26, 2022, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
There is no opposition. Our minutes have approved unanimously. The next item on our agenda is communications. Mr. Kinch, do we have any communications not related to tonight's case to report?
Nothing to report at this time.
All right. The next item on our agenda is public hearings. I'd like to explain our board procedures. In accordance with our established bylaws and board procedures, the appellant will be called forward to state their case. Following the appellant's presentation, the public hearing will then be open. This is our public hearing about the case. At this point, we are having the public hearing for anyone who wishes to address our board not related to our case at hand tonight. We have no one in our audience. Do we have anyone who is attending via Zoom that would like to present to the board on a subject not related to our case this evening?
We just have the city on Zoom as well as the applicant, so there's no other folks here to join us tonight.
All right, then we have no public who wishes to comment, so we will move on to old business. Mr. Kinch, do we have any old business?
We do not have any old business at this time.
Seeing no old business, we will move on to the new business, which is the case at hand. Now, I will outline the board procedures for hearing a zoning board case. Our applicant will be called forward to state his case. Following his presentation, our public hearing will then be open for anyone who wishes to address the board about this case. Each person will be allowed to speak for 5 minutes only. In addition, each person will be allowed to address our board only once unless they have new and pertinent information to share. The public hearing will then be closed. Any correspondence received regarding the case will be presented to the board. The board will then enter into discussion. All of our motions are made in the positive to avoid confusion. This does not necessarily mean the person making the motion is in favor of the request. It will take 3 positive votes to approve a request. Any request which is denied shall not be brought back to the board for a period of 1 year. The board reserves the right to ask questions of the appellant at any point throughout the hearing. Mr. Kinch, will you please introduce our case?
The case we have before you, Steve, can you turn this mic on for me? The case that we have before you this evening, we've identified as case number 22-01. This is an application that's been filed by Sean Staricha. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly there, Sean, who recently purchased a home at 931 South Fancher Street, which also includes a second home at 505 Gaylord Street. The applicant is seeking a variance to create a lot split for a parcel that is located in the CD3 district that requires 50 feet. We met with the applicant and talked over a number of scenarios where that line should be. One of the reasons that we offset it from the garage was to eliminate the need to do any type of a fire rating on the existing garage. You have the dates when the homes and so on had been constructed, late 1800s. Our house on 931 South Fancher Street, and I think the other one at 505, and they've been in this configuration for a number of years. When the applicant purchased the property, it was his understanding that all the properties had a rental license on it, which would be the smaller house on the East Gaylord Street side, and then also on the garage, the attached garage on the 931 house, that had been converted to a mother-in-law suite, and was under the impression that that had a rental license from the city. Later to find out that was not the case. And so we've been meeting with the applicant to walk them through the process, what that might take to do a lot split to create 2 parcels with 2 single-family dwellings, and then the applicant following, assuming that the variance could be granted, would go through our process with the Planning Commission to create a 2-family dwelling at 931, which would allow a rental license to be issued for the converted attached garage. Property is zone CD3. You see the information right here from the zoning ordinance that talks about primarily this district is made up of low-density, single-family, detached residential homes. It's predominantly the main building type in that district. There are a few larger non-conforming rooming dwellings and that type of thing in the nearby area. Median front setbacks anywhere from 10 to 30 feet in nature, and both of these properties would fall within that these requirements. All surrounding properties, as well as the existing property, are located in the CD3, with the future land use being designated as residential. You have copies of the survey that are current conditions on the left. These are a little blurry, but you can see that the lot is made up of 100 foot in width fronting on Fancher Street and extends back 138 and a half feet. What you see on the right is how the lots would be reconfigured, showing the smaller house on the backside of the property sitting on a lot that's 39.45 feet. There's similar lots in the area, and the applicant has pointed those out in the application. It's not uncommon to see some of these smaller lots in and around the area. Whether or not they've been created to accommodate some of these things that we're seeing here tonight, where we've got more than one dwelling unit on a site. We'd have to do more research on that. This one here is the site plan. We'd asked the applicant to kind of outline the parking. And so you can see at the 931 site, they have parking out in front of what would be the future apartment. We have parking along the garage, which would remain with the 931 site. The applicant, we talked about, could the garage be removed? And apparently that was constructed mid-1900s in relatively good shape. And so they would like to maintain that if they could. And then, of course, we are looking at the parking at 505 Gaylord, which would be created behind the house portion here, which you can see from this side, the picture. They would create a parking pad here. Currently, it's just off the alley if you had an opportunity to visit the site. The lower picture here represents the front facade that would be facing East Gaylord. And then here's just a couple other shots here. It's a paved alley that runs down through there. Parking currently in the yard, that would be restored. Parking would be relocated to the backside of the house if approval was granted. And then this is the home here at 931 South Fancher Street. I would assume this was probably the first unit built on the site, and then the Gaylord Street property followed later on. But you can see that it's a relatively large house. The garage is kind of connected with a fence, and so there again, they would like to leave the garage with the 931 property. And the surveys and what they have presented here show that. Bottom lower picture, you can see that it's the garage that was at one point a garage, where the driveway extends right up into that area. Typically, when you convert garages, they move that parking pad back a little bit, landscape it so it doesn't give that appearance that the driveway goes right through the home. But in this case, you can see it does extend all the way up to the wall elevation there. So that's what we have in the way of just a brief presentation here with this site. So they're looking for a variance to reduce the required lot width from 50 feet down to 39.45 feet. And he's outlined his rationale why the board should consider the variance this evening. And he is joining us via Zoom.
At this time, does the board have any questions for Mr. Kinch before the applicant presents his case?
I have a question. So Mr. Kinch, did you explore with the applicant the possibility of moving the new property line to the other side of the garage? Because I think that would allow 50 feet on both sides, and that wouldn't take the garage down.
You can put the garage with the other side. It puts the garage in the front yard. It would be the only thing.
Right, which is...
I believe your front yard now would be on Gaylord Street for both properties.
could be. I thought the larger house faced Fancher, though.
It does.
It does.
Okay.
The way our ordinance defines the front property line is the narrow frontage.
Okay.
So we create a narrower frontage on that 931. Gaylord Street now becomes the front lot.
Okay.
And the secondary street becomes Fancher.
Okay. So with the garage then in front, it would be another violation of the zoning code.
Yeah, we put the garage out in front of the house that way in the front yard.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
I follow. Okay, thank you.
At this time, I will call Mr. Staricha. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. Please correct me, to present your case.
So, as you guys saw from the drawings, these houses were built well over 100 years ago, and the garage, based off of the way it was constructed, was built in the mid 1900s. And what I'd like to do is to have the ability to sell 505 as a single family home down the road if I need to. And not only that, it would allow me to meet code by applying for a two family home on 931. So that garage is actually of some use to me, whether that be renting it or just using it as a guest house for anyone that may stay with us. My main concern though, like I said, is I was planning from the get-go when I bought the property to split these two, so I would be able to sell the 505 address on its own. And this whole process of finding out that the apartment was an illegal residence has kind of just fast forwarded the need to split them. And what I've been doing is I've been working with Brian Kench there to come up with the best way to meet the zoning conditions that have been set out and to match neighboring lots as much as we possibly can. I did want to add one other note to the gentleman's question about why we didn't move the property line between the garage and the house. We also noted that by doing that, it would leave minimal space in what is now called the backyard. You'd only have about 2 feet where that property line would end up. So that's another reason why we avoided that route. I mean, I don't have a whole lot more to add besides what Mr. Kench has already mentioned. I'm not sure if you gentlemen have any questions for me or not.
At this time, is there any member of the board who would like to ask a question of our applicant?
Yeah, I'd like to know how did you get the impression that the duplex was allowed or that the rental property was allowed when you bought the property?
So my realtor at the time had given me a packet of information about the house itself, and it noted that there was 3 units on the house, the garage being one, which netted about $450 of rental income. The 505 address, which at the time netted about $725 rental income. And then the main house, which he was also renting out, which was about $1,200 of rental income. Other than that, it was just verbal discussions between myself, the seller, and the realtor. And the way we found out that it was an illegal residence is I was working with the company that I use for property management. They had the fire department come in and inspect the apartment. When they went back to their office to input the information, it came up as an illegal residence, and that's how we figured that one out. I still do have I believe I have the original packet that I got from the realtor stating the rental income on that property if you guys want that. I'd have to dig it out of my filing cabinet though.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to establish, so you bought the property in good faith with the understanding your rental would be fine and you got bad, inaccurate, whatever information from the realtor. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I have a question. Was the property presented to you as a duplex or a triplex? Because what I'm seeing here, I'm under the understanding it should be a triplex, and if we've got, and I drove by the house and I've got 931, 931 and a half on the side of the house, and then 505, and they're all on the same property ID. So shouldn't that constitute it being a triplex instead of a duplex?
when I was first brought onto the property, it wasn't specifically used that verbiage, but they did mention that the property did have the 3 dwellings. And at the time, that was under I was trusting them that they were telling me the truth at the time. But I mean, I don't have anything else to add to that. I don't know if Mr. Kench was about to say something there.
I was just going to suggest, typically with a triplex, we have shared common walls. In this case, we'd have a duplex and a single family. We would just consider 3 dwelling units on that property
Okay.
under our rental licensing. Good question.
I think that's a really good question. It speaks to my point, or it speaks to my question, Commissioner Stressman, about when you are examining the property to purchase it, if, 3 dwelling units, however it's described, there are 3 units. So a duplex, and if it's all one lot, it would be, a 3 dwelling rental, triplex, however you want to call it. And so it feels like there should be some due diligence there in terms of making sure all those things are where they need to be.
And question, did the Realtor go over what constitutes being done for this to become a licensed rental unit in the property?
So what she told me is in order for us to have 505 by itself is to split it off. She told me that I was able to rent out the apartment immediately and then do the property split at a later date, which obviously is not the case. And I wanted to mention to the lady's comment there, this is my first time buying a property, and the whole purpose we purchased the property is to intend that rental income to help us pay the mortgage and to have a little bit more of a gap of income so we don't have to worry as much. And obviously this property is a little bit more complicated than as easy and quickly as the Realtor presented it.
I guess that leads me to a question. You had said something about a property management company, so you're not in the business of buying properties and renting them out?
No, we're actually moving to 931 this weekend. My wife is going to be attending CMU for her PhD program. And we were already looking for houses in the area, but we were looking at about the $50,000 to $100,000 range, and the Realtor had brought this property up to our attention because if the 2 rentals were actually being used and we were getting income from those, the monthly payment would be a fraction of what a payment on a $100,000 single family home would have been.
Okay. Thank you.
You mentioned the fire department looking at the property. Did they come in? Did they come into 505 and assess if that's even a licensable?
Yes. So my management company, they came out and they had the 505 address and the 931 and a half address inspected. 505 passed and they have an updated license for that address. 931 and a half is the only address that came up with issues.
So looking at the certificate of survey, now they've got parking for 931A they list. Now that's going to be the existing main house that is 931. Is that correct? Or are you looking at creating a garage unit auxiliary building that you could convert to a rental space and rent out?
Are you talking about parking or?
Well,
Sorry, I'm a little confused on your question.
It says the parking in front of the garage unit.
Yes.
And when I say the garage unit, I say the existing 2-car garage that is being used as a garage, not as a living space, correct? And
yes, that is, yeah, I'm using that as an actual garage. We have no plans on converting that or using it as a rental. I may end up finishing the garage and making an office space in there because I'll be working from that property remotely. But yes, the parking for the 2-car garage on the drawing, that will be for either automotive parking or portion of it will become an office.
Okay.
So then the main house at 931, And what also is labeled from the side of the structure, 931 and a half, that's currently on there, that is what you want to create into a duplex at a future date by licensing 931 and a half, and then you living in the main portion of the house.
Correct.
Is that what your intent is?
Correct, that is.
Okay. And then 505, your intent is possibly selling that off as a future date.
I'd like to have that as, like, if something were to happen and we needed money or funds, then we would have that option to sell that house. The way it is now, if I wanted to sell that, or if I had to sell it, I'd have to sell the whole property, which would then put us out of a house.
I'd like to, could you please put the actual photographs of the property on one of our screens?
Steve?
I'm sorry to interrupt, Commissioner Stressman. I thought that might be helpful.
I just, yeah, that way we can all see the same thing.
Yeah, right there.
See, the way I interpret the engineer, or the certificate of survey, is they've got the existing two-car garage, and they've got a red parking area, which is 931A. And so I'm assuming, or when I first looked at this over the weekend, I was thinking, well, is his intent to make that garage a future living space? Which, if that were the case, then that would constitute that actually being a three dwelling unit on the property, which doesn't conform, if I'm not mistaken,
Correct.
to the existing guidelines of square footage for the property.
Correct. So I actually had drawn that. So I used the survey drawing to mark up where the parking would be for each one. And in hindsight, I should have covered that exterior two-car garage with red as well, because that entire section will be parking for that'll be where my wife and I park. And then the apartment that's attached to 931 will park in front of their apartment. And for 505, they'll either park on the back there.
Okay. That's much more clear. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Can I give everybody going forward an idea? Red on black is really bad for people who are colorblind.
Yes.
Sorry. Now I know for the future.
I'm having a tough time, but I figured it out.
Okay.
My apologies.
You'd like to talk about these?
We can,
If you want to ask Ken, if he wants to just.
well, are there other questions for the applicant?
Let me just point out for the applicant that I know we've been talking about then converting to a duplex and getting a special use permit. We'll need to keep in mind that that's an issue for the Planning Commission. So whatever we do tonight would not relate to the idea of the special use permit for the duplex. That's the other body. So that's not within our purview to handle. So whatever they do, they do.
I understand.
Okay.
That's why if for some reason they decide not to allow that duplex, then I'll be using that apartment as like a guest house for anyone that might be visiting us.
Okay, very good.
Could you share with us how the utilities are currently configured on the property?
Yes. So when I originally bought the property, the water and the gas on 931 are connected, and they still currently are connected together. I had separated the electrical from 931 into two services, and that created a separate service for 931 and a half. 505 has their own gas, electrical, and water meters. And I do not plan on separating the gas or electric for the duplex, or hopefully soon to be duplex. We are planning on adding a separate shutoff for 931. I spoke with the water department over the past couple days and a excavating company. And they found that 505 has their own shutoff, but the shutoff for 931 is before 505. So if you shut off 931, you shut off 505. And I already put in plans to get that corrected. So if for whatever reason we sell 505, then their shutoff is separate from the rest of the property.
Since we're talking about water, I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, but I know that there is a communication from the water department.
Yeah, I believe that is the shutoff issue that I addressed earlier in the week with them. I could be wrong though.
Communication sheet. I need my communication. My question is, you had a couple of different options on how you can make the water and sanitary sewer work. So, and one of them is to draft an easement for 505 so that their sanitary sewer can remain on the 931 Fancher property. And so I want to know, like, are you prepared to do that if you're willing to sell it, to give that property, once it's no longer yours, an easement for sewer on your property?
Yeah, we're prepared for that. We are, like I said, we're planning to fix the water main shutoff issue, and then we're going to draw up that easement for the sewer.
Okay.
Do you have it?
Are there more did I say
I don't know
something?
if this is a question for now for a minute, so I think I'll wait a minute.
Okay. We'll put a pause on Commissioner McGuire's question, and we'll see if there are other questions for our applicant at this time. Thank you so much. At this time, our board will enter into discussion.
Okay, so my question is, if we were to approve it, we could require the easement, can't we?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Because you said, where's he prepared? I mean, we can tell him he has to do that.
Right.
Okay.
There were two options.
Yeah.
One is completely making a new sewer main, and
But I
the
mean,
other.
we could pass it with saying you have to do one or the other. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because that was, when I read this whole thing, that was my biggest issue is where's the sewer? Because I've seen those happen before where then somebody didn't give him an easement and there's a big fight.
Well, and I've seen it happen where there is an easement and then there is a major sewer problem and the yard has to be dug up and then the property owner's like, there's a fight,
Oh, there's a fight, but at least it's a.
At least it's a legal
Within the
document,
legal.
yeah. So, discussion? You, Commissioner
Well,
Stressman?
I'm curious as to where the sewer ties in.
Yeah.
Tie in externally out of the house, or do they tie it together internally?
I think they're out doing
Which
it.
it doesn't make sense that it would flow through the house, but.
Well, let's take a pause because I think we should discuss our correspondence. I think, and maybe that will answer some questions. So, Mr. Kinch, will you introduce the correspondence we've received on this case?
That's right. Department of Fire Safety obviously will, if this is approved and it moves through to Planning Commission for a special use permit, the fire department will be working with licensing requirements and updates, that type of thing, as called for under our city standards. You also have a copy of a DPW comments dated 4/18 that was in your packet. It talks about some of the things that we discussed here with the sewers, easements, and those types of things, along with what, any work in the right-of-way obviously is going to require permits through our Public Works Department as well. If they decide to put new lines in, all those will be permitted and inspected through our engineering department. So we have.
And as we're in the middle of our discussion, I'm going to check in and see if anyone from the public has joined our Zoom and would like to present information to us about this case.
No, there's no one other than the applicant at this point.
Okay, then there is no one here. I'm going to close the public hearing for this case, and we will continue our board discussion.
Well, if there are no other questions, I think we've covered a lot of areas. Let me see if I can propose a motion that would would cover what our concerns are and what the applicant is trying to do. And I'll try to say this slowly. So I would move to approve case ZBA 22-01 to permit splitting of the single parcel containing 931 South Fancher and 505 East Gaylord to create two separate parcels more in line with the neighborhood and reduce the East Gaylord lot width to 39.45 feet. Okay, that's the first part. The existing self-standing garage can be preserved. However, no increase in garage size will be permitted. Both created properties must comply with all DPW and Water Department regulations. Does that do it?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Before I call the vote, I would like for us to go through our findings of fact. Our findings of fact are how we are legally required to make zoning variance decisions.
Commissioner Stressman has a question. Commissioner Stressman has a question.
Oh, Chris, so I'm sorry, Commissioner Stressman, please
Our
go.
finding of fact, does that constitute discussion of the motion?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
All right.
absolutely. And if you have a general comment, feel free before we start. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just remember in previous incidences, we kind of pushed the vote before discussion.
Yes.
So, I just want to be sure.
Yes. So the first finding is that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zoning district. Exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions normally will include exceptional narrowness, shallowness of a shape or of a specific property on the effective date of this chapter, exceptional topographic conditions or other extraordinary situations on the land, building, or structure, or use or development of the property immediately adjoining the property in question. So that's our first finding. Comments?
Well, I think what you have here is a very archaic property configuration right now, and that this would allow us to create something which still is in keeping with the more modern uses in the area.
Second finding, that such a variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by other properties in the same zoning district and in the vicinity. Discussion.
Well, as Commissioner Orlick pointed out, this will make the lot sizes more similar to what's in the corresponding area.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is the idea that you have to have all of these findings?
All of them.
Okay. I didn't know if it's one or it's all of them.
It's all of them. That the variance request is not one where the specific conditions pertaining to the property are so general or recurrent in nature as to make the formulation of a general regulation for such conditions reasonably practicable.
Yeah, there are relatively few lots, again, going back in the ancient history of zoning or really non-zoning that would do this, so this would not apply to a general regulation across the city.
That the authorizing of such variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property.
It should have no impact on adjacent property.
It should not. I have concern because once you put in a parking pad for the 505 Gaylord is not going to have a yard at all. And, you know, that will be up to, should we grant this variance, the lack of a yard will be, the decision of the home purchaser. However, this is a residential neighborhood. This is not a apartment area, et cetera. And I have some real concern that there's going to be a whole lot of parking pad and a whole lot of cars right here once these are all split up. So there's where I have my concern.
My question, you said no yard, you just no backyard. is what
No
you
back, a very small front yard and no
said. 'Cause They're gonna
backyard.
park behind the
Well,
house, right?
correct.
Off the alley.
Yes,
Currently, they're parking alongside the house, overhanging the alley.
yes.
So they're technically parking in
See,
the
this
alley.
is gonna be an improvement for
And-
parking, I think.
As far as the parking, what kind of surface would the city require that they put in at 505?
They could do anything. I mean, gravel,
Non-pervious
pavement.
gravel
yeah,
or-
yeah, gravel could be.
Yeah, the alley itself is gravel, so.
And there's no, they could do gravel, concrete, asphalt, whatever the homeowner chooses.
And Brian, from the standpoint of property on the lot that does not have a building on it, this would meet code, right?
It would.
As presented to us.
It would.
Okay.
Wait, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, I was just making sure that, I understand your question, but I think as it's presented to us, there still is enough green space, parking space, what have you, that matches code. So that thing, it would not be, we won't be granting a variance for that because none is needed for that particular item.
Right. I did try to do the math on that to make sure that there was enough green space. Everybody knows I like green space. Next, the authorizing of the variance will not materially impair the purposes of the zoning chapter or of the public interest. Any comments, discussion?
Again, this is, as I mentioned before, I think this is something that principally the planning commission did deal with in terms of the special use permit process.
Yes, that's outside our purview, absolutely. And I think we've stated for the record, but I think after the vote, we should make it again clear that our decision is purely on the lot and it has nothing to do with any special use permit or anything.
I think you made that.
The last finding of fact, that the need for the variance is not created by any action of the applicant or previous owner. I think we'd have to go back quite a few previous owners, but the previous owner, again, here's my concern, the previous owner was doing an unlicensed rental. And
That's exactly it. You're not taking into consideration the converted garage at this point. You're only looking at the fact that this house, these two houses are more than 100 years old, built on one parcel.
But his whole case is about the fact that he wants a duplex, and he's hinged his whole case on the ability to rent these properties because he thought they could be rented, and the previous owner was having an illegal rental, and so.
I think this is just strictly the lot width at this point, as he made his case regarding possibly selling 505 at a later date. This prevents him from having to sell the entire two houses. If it doesn't get approved for a special use permit, then he would just use that for guests, that type of thing, at 931 and a half. This is merely lot width that we're looking at, so.
Brian, this lot is, the proposed lot's gonna be just under 40 feet. I used to live in the area and my lot width was 54 feet, I believe.
Sure, there's all kinds
And I
of,
thought that was very, very narrow.
it is.
And I'm having a hard time with this 39 and a half feet or whatever. I know the lots are narrow down there, and I know that a lot of these properties were at one time maybe old carriage houses, because I've got one on my property that is a live-in property, and my mother-in-law lives in it. So, you know, I can feel for them, but I'm just having a hard time with this less than 40-foot lot dimension. Especially, you know, with what we've gone through in the last couple of years as far as, you know, getting the zoning and having everything more in line with current standards. I can't see, unless we're gonna put mini houses on it, you know, having lots 40 foot in width. So.
Just for the record, I'm going to point out in the applicant's supporting documents and such here, he'd identified at least two different lots in the area that were 38 feet, one at 510 East High, the other one at 208 East High, and then there's 1028 South Fancher, which has a 40-foot lot width. So that's how we got to making the argument that it's consistent with others in the area, so.
I think that's the crucial issue, were this in any other portion of the city. No, this would be totally out of keeping and in character with the rest of the neighborhood and the expectations of residents. But given where this particular parcels is I think it conforms.
I just make the comment that actually before the meeting I've been going past that property on a relatively regular basis for 50 years, and I didn't know it was one property. So, I mean, I think character-wise, I don't think it's going to be that big a change.
Yeah, I've always thought it was its own property already, too.
I think I would feel more comfortable if the case hadn't been presented that he bought it because he could rent. And I understand the question before us is a lot line, but this case was presented about being able to create a duplex, and the previous owner created the issue. And so I have a little bit of trouble justifying giving a variance based on the way the case was presented.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I understand. I think I'm looking at it from the standpoint of if this is granted, we are creating two lots with residences on them. Whether or not that one lot may end up being duplexes isn't for us to decide, it's for the planning commission to decide. And I think what we do here is entirely opens up their opportunity to do whatever they wish. And I could see where they might decide, no, this is not correct, fine, or they could decide, well, either way, I think what we've done is simply open that door. But
how many
we
times-
have not made that decision on their behalf.
The other question I have is, does this create a precedent for someone to buy a property and think, well, this is the way the property is, and then find out, no, it's not. Oh, well, let me just get a zoning variance to fix my problem because I didn't do my due diligence and complete research.
And again, I think that's planning commission to decide, but I agree with you, Laura. I think this is the second case we've had now recently where allegedly a property buyer has gotten bad information from a realtor. And I would just encourage people to be more diligent in checking that out with the city, and B, realtors to be a little more upfront in checking it themselves to make sure they aren't promising a use that is not currently legal.
And I think this property is unique enough in the fact that it's on a corner with two streets and an alley behind it, so there's a lot of access, where another larger property, not in this area of town, there's no large properties in this area of town, but on the edge of town, maybe they'd be hard pressed to be able to build a house in the back and then say that they need to split the lot because there wouldn't be any access to it. So I think this is unique enough that we can make a decision without setting a precedent.
And I would go with that as well. And I will tell you that I totally sympathize with your thoughts because I do this. A, I'm a real estate broker, but B, I buy properties. And I don't ever buy a property without going to the city and making sure it's licensed. Or it can, well, in fact, I bought unlicensed properties and I march them through before I write a check to make sure. And I've walked away from several because they go, no, it's going to cost you a whole bunch of money to do what it takes. So, I mean, I'm a little skeptical on that end of it, but I think, like I said, the fact that we all thought it was two properties, it probably makes sense to make it two properties.
Thoughts, Commissioner Stressman?
I'm torn on this. I'm a real estate broker too, and I am all for property rights, but I'm just torn on that 40-footer, and That's all I'm going to say.
So another question, because I hear Commissioner Stressman, is it just for conformity, the reason that the lot line is 39 and a half feet straight back and you didn't take any of the yard away from
Well,
931 Fancher?
I guess my thoughts on it are, you know, we fought this new zoning, 4 years ago. And, one of the things was to try and get things more conforming. And now we're taking a non-conforming property, which it sits right now, and we're creating two non-conforming properties. Because one, the lot lines are not by the standard setbacks prescribed by the code on both 505 and also 931, and I just think we're just adding to the confusion, so.
Where are the 931 setbacks off?
Well, look up there on the,
Okay. I guess somebody's got to, because I thought that was the whole idea, that by putting that line there, 931 had its setbacks.
so on the garage, and what setback is 8 foot? Is that the standard setback for the?
Three.
It puts the garage is compliant based on building code. If you skip less than 3 feet, typically we start looking at having to do some type of fire rating, updating the garage. Originally, they had a regular shaped lot to give it some additional lot width at the front part of the lot, but it just jogged past the garage. The line ran down right even with the garage and then jogged out, which it still didn't comply with the 50 feet. So sitting down with the applicant, staff we coached them and said, if we're going to go through the variance process, let's keep it
But that garage has a proper setback.
proper setback.
Yeah,
yes.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the only non-conforming property would be 505 if we grant this variance. Okay.
By looking at the survey stakes on the northern boundary of the property.
Sure.
How does that sit with the property adjacent to it? Did that property line encroach on the northern boundary?
I think there's a fence in there. Let me, I don't know if I have a good picture of that or not.
Paying north on Fancher.
I'm saying the property north of 931.
Okay.
So the
Oh,
next
north.
property north, there's a survey stakes on the alley side and also Fancher Street side. And in looking down that line, it looks like there might be encroachment on that property line by the neighbor's property or the neighbor's building. So I'm just saying, it's,
I live in that part of town.
I live in the
Everybody
north
encroaches.
end and
It's all encroaching.
and I can shoot a laser down and barely cut between my garage or my auxiliary house and the neighbor's garage. I mean, they kind of overhang, but, so I can see
Let's see what Google tells us here.
Yeah, I have a house that was built in 1879. Both lot lines aren't encroached on. They didn't worry much back then.
Oh, I put 520 in, that's why. So you currently have a motion on the floor then too? Yes.
We do have a motion.
Yeah, see if I can drag this along. Even with the map, I'm afraid that a lot of the vegetation that's in here is going to be. Yeah, I'm not going to see much in there,
That
are we?
greenhouse.
So I guess what I was looking at when I looked at the property to the north of 931, and they've got the survey stakes out there. And it looks like if you were to look down the line, it looks like maybe there might be some encroachment there.
One to the north is that Cape Cod.
Yeah.
I guess we could ask the applicant who's still with us if they've noticed that based on the survey.
Yes,
like that.
Mr. Sarica, could you address Commissioner Stressman's question, please?
So when you say encroachment, can you clarify that? Sorry, I'm new to realty, so I'm not really sure what you're speaking about.
Well, it just looks like the property line that the surveyor has staked out. It just looks like maybe part of the neighbor's property is encroaching on, or the neighbor's buildings are encroaching onto the property line.
I would have to look. I do know in the backyard. So if you look from the Gaylord Street back, behind that house, there's actually, I believe, a metal fence that goes from 931 down and does a 90 and towards that like house in the back there, behind 505. I don't remember if it goes past or attaches to it, but I do know there's a metal fence back there on the property line. So you can kind of see it. Okay, so yeah, it goes right past. So you can see in this one photo in the upper right here that line there, I believe that to be the property line. I could be wrong though. I haven't really looked back there a whole lot. The only time I've been out there is there's been snow, so I haven't bothered with that part of the property yet.
I'll let everyone peruse the pictures.
If you'd like, I could try pulling up pictures from the survey we had done before purchasing the property and see if I can find a better photo of that angle.
Commissioner Stressman, would you like to see that?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you for that offer. So is there any more discussion on the motion? Before we vote, I'll ask Vice Chair Orlick to repeat his motion.
Okay, because it is rather extended, but
Because
I tried to get in everything that we talked about. Okay. The motion to approve case ZBA 22-01 to permit splitting of the single parcel containing 931 South Fancher and 505 East Gaylord to create two separate parcels more in line with the neighborhood and reduce the East Gaylord lot width to 39.45 feet. The existing self-standing garage can be preserved. However, no increase in garage size will be permitted. Both created properties must comply with all DPW and Water Department regulations.
And I believe Commissioner Friedrich seconded the motion. Hearing no other discussion, I'll call the vote.
I think we need to do a roll call for.
Yeah, Commissioner Stressman.
I'd like to move the vote to next meeting because I still think there's some unanswered questions. And in the case that this doesn't go the applicant's favor, then he would be another year before he could reapply, or year and a half, I forget what it is. And I would rather do some more due diligence and push the vote for a month than for fear he loses and has to wait another year before he can do anything about it.
Are we allowed to do that,
That would
Mr.
be,
Kinch?
yes, that would be a motion to table.
Yes.
And since Commissioner Stressman indicated a motion to table for 1 month, because I think that's what you said, right?
Till the next meeting,
So
yes.
that can always be brought up ahead of above the existing motion, and then we'll see how that plays out.
All right, I'm sorry, but I have to, it's a motion to postpone.
Motion, yeah.
A motion to table is for later in the meeting.
Right, that's right, yeah, motion to postpone, I misspoke.
Yeah.
Motion to postpone until the next meeting, until the
Motion to
meeting,
post-
did you say the next
Motion
meeting?
to postpone.
Motion
That's
to
the proper
postpone a
version.
decision on this case
Until-
until the next meeting.
Would it be until the next meeting, or would it be until the May meeting? Because if we didn't meet in May, our next meeting might be.
Next year.
Yeah, next year.
I think we need to be very specific and say 1 month.
It'd be the next
So
scheduled
we'd
meeting.
have a
So the
May
next scheduled
meeting.
meeting or 1 month,
So
whatever. So my motion is to postpone the meeting till the next scheduled meeting and have the vote then. Because I just feel there's some questions that I myself am vague on, and I think I got a pretty good handle on real estate. I'm just kind of vague on this, so I'd like to do a little more due diligence.
All right, I'm going to restate Commissioner Stressman's motion and make sure that I capture what he's trying to say. Commissioner Stressman moves that we postpone our decision on case ZBA 22-01 until our May 2022 meeting.
Yes.
Do we have a second? I will second his motion. I'm allowed, as chair, I can second.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just want, are there things that we need to bring back as staff that would help the board make this decision?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Discuss that for the motion.
I think, yes, let's discuss what we would like to see from staff and even from the applicant.
Can we see if that motion passed first?
We could see if the motion passes first and then make the list for staff.
Or you could look at it that you'd like to see what would be required of staff, and that might affect how you voted. on the
Exactly, yeah.
postpone.
I think
Fair enough.
Vice Chair Orlick makes a good point,
Yeah, that's all right.
Commissioner McGuire.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I would like to see more photographs of the lots. I'm interested in the possible encroachment because like Commissioner Stressman, I did notice that when I looked at the survey stakes. So that's something that I would like to see, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues for your.
Well, and I'll agree with you, as far as the survey and maybe have some more explicit photographs that show the, shots down the lot lines. That's probably one of the more concerning things.
Can I ask a dumb question? So if that's, say that building's encroaching by 2 feet on this lot line, what does that do? What impact does that have on anything? I mean, like I said, I have 2 of them on my lot. I've owned my house for 30 years. I mean, I don't know, they've been encroaching there for 110 years. I mean, this building, if it's encroaching, it's probably been encroaching for 50 to 100 years.
Yeah.
So if it's encroaching by 3 feet, why does that affect anything we're doing here? It might tell me why, is all I'm asking. I'm not saying it doesn't, I just don't know why it does.
I'm just looking for clarification on the lot lines.
Okay.
I would like to hear the applicant talk about this case without mentioning the fact that he's trying to do this because he wants a special use permit. Well, the way he presented the case, this whole thing stands on, I want to make a duplex. And, and I just feel like, and because of that, this case is resting on the fact that a previous owner, it is the fault of the previous owner. And to me, I'm having trouble with that finding of fact.
Well, I look at it a little bit different. I didn't notice anything absolutely unequivocal that he's doing this because he has to have the duplex. I think there was enough discussion that with viability, I'd love to have the duplex, but the viability is we got 2 structures, 2 lots that I could sell off separately.
Yeah.
And so I don't think the duplex was absolutely fundamental to what he's doing. Yeah, admittedly, he presented it. Probably that would be a good thing not to bring to the planning commission, but I look at it from a strict standpoint of what we're allowing versus what he'd like to do on down the line.
True. Well, are there other things from staff? Because I think we need to make that list, make the list for the applicant, and then vote on Commissioner Stressman's motion.
I'll also say that, if we pass this as proposed, and 505 becomes a separate lot, two separate tax IDs, I don't know how the applicant's mortgage is configured. He may own them free and clear. But I guess I look at, if we do this, 505 now becomes a separate entity, and we're handing them a gift of, what's the price of a single-family lot in Mount Pleasant with a house on it? $50,000 to $75,000 is what I look at.
May I make a
That's a
comment
question
on
for the
that?
applicant. Have you discussed what happens with your mortgage?
Yes, so, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I actually spoke with them and they would, I would give them the second tax ID and it would be added to the mortgage. They would come out and appraise the property again, being two separate items or properties that they can sell. Therefore, they're liable to make more money if I were ever to default on the loan. But both properties would be attached to the mortgage, and I would not be gaining any sort of financial advantage by doing so.
That's not under our purview, but just in a due diligence. So are there other things for staff to bring back, Commissioner Stressman?
That's it.
Okay, I'll call this vote. All in favor of Commissioner Stressman's motion to postpone our decision for 1 month?
You probably need to roll call
I think
this.
we have to.
I will roll
because
call, I will roll call it. Let me get my cheat sheet so I don't skip anybody.
I can call it. I can call it.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Kinch will roll call our vote.
Stressman,
Yes.
Orlick,
No?
Friedrich? No. McGuire?
No.
Raisnin?
No.
Motion failed.
All right, so
We're back to the main motion.
we are back to the main motion on the table tonight, and that is the one that Vice Chair Orlick has read to us twice now. Does anybody need it read a third time before we do this roll call vote? All right, Mr. Kinch, would you please roll call our vote on the main motion of this case?
Stressman,
No.
Orlick,
Yes.
Friedrich,
Aye.
McGuire,
Yes.
Raisnin?
No. The motion carries. The variance is granted. So let me go back to our agenda. Thank you for being with us tonight. And we will move on to, is there any new business?
I don't have anything to report under new business. And at this point, we don't have any cases. I think we had one potential applicant that we spoke with, but we haven't heard anything further on it. So if we do get something in, we'll definitely get that off to you so we can let you know to block your calendar out in the fourth week of Wednesday in May.
Okay.
Is there any other business for our?
Fourth Wednesday.
Is there any other business for the board?
I don't have anything.
I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Support.
All in favor of adjourning, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
The, what is today, April 22nd, 2022? 27th, 2022 meeting of the Mount Pleasant Zoning Board of Appeals is now closed.
So you can do that.